Before we begin, I'd just like to say that this video is totally not a parody of Sliphantom's Unicum guides for World of Tanks, and that they totally did not inspire me to do this video. You also should totally not check out his channel, because he makes totally awful videos. Let's begin. This car is a Toyota AE86. You have to believe me on this. If anyone ever comes up to you and tells you what you're actually driving is a 1991 Honda CRX, do not listen to them. They are anti-Toyota agents paid by Turn 10 to trick you into thinking Toyotas are not in Horizon 4. Trust me, I'm an honest man. I would never lie to you. Just ignore the big Honda badge in the front. It's there because I really like Hondas. I don't think I need to mention how big the AE86's reputation is. It started off as a modest affordable rear-wheel drive hatchback made in the 80s for anyone who just wanted a cheap car to throw around the bends, and it is now one of the most coveted cars of the JDM community. In fact, it's so coveted that its price skyrocketed, and it is now worth a lot more than it should be, just because of that famous Japanese dude who used to drift with it in the Toge. Or because it was the protagonist's car in that Chinese cartoon. Luckily, we won't have to worry about any of those things here in Forza. For some reason the AE86 is in the Honda brand. Ignore that. But if you look at the price, you'll realize that it is actually quite a cheap car at just 20,000 credits. And furthermore, it is actually a pretty decent and fun car for A-Class. It won't be beating any bone shakers, but it won't be leaving you in last place either. To teach you how to drive the M.O.V.E, we have brought here a special guest from our studio. Some say he's the #1 delivery boy in all of Japan. All we know is he is Takumi Fujiwara with a tan. Let's watch. First of all, there is one very important thing you need to do before even thinking of driving this car. Play Eurobeat. Initially Eurobeat will improve your performance by about 50%, but it is a well-known fact that Toho Eurobeat will turn you into a driving god. Turn that shit up so hard you can't even hear anything else. And let's begin. Despite being rear-wheel drive, the AE86 actually behaves a bit like a front-wheel drive car sometimes. I wonder why. This means you will tend to understeer on some corners, while in others, you'll tend to oversteer. All of this seemingly at random. But despite the car's behavior seeming random, it really isn't. The AE86 tends to understeer on corner entry, but if you're not careful with the throttle, it will also oversteer on corner exit, especially on slower corners. In order to fix this, you have to adopt a different mindset while driving this car. Despite being small and rear-wheel drive, you must approach corners as if you were a front-wheel drive. In other words, be prepared for understeer and brake a bit earlier than usual for most corners. As you're approaching a corner, brake and start downshifting. As you're turning into the apex, this is where you'll start to notice how understeery this car is, but don't be fooled, because the moment you go through that apex and start accelerating, anything could happen. Nurse the car towards it, and as soon as you hit the apex, get on the throttle. This car is surprisingly grippy, so most of the time you don't need to worry about gradually stepping on the accelerator, because your wheels don't spin much, but be ready to countersteer just in case. Your biggest weakness is your tendency to understeer on high-speed corners. In order to fix this, be sure to lift your throttle often while cornering, and tap the brakes as necessary. Also, never try to take the inside of a corner. There is one extra thing you must do while driving this car. However, this is a bit risky at times, and must only be done if you're sure you're going to win, and that is the rifter. If you're right in front of someone, and are somehow sure they are slower than you in the corners, drift to flex on them. This won't really do much besides make you look like a retard, but at least you'll get style points, and those are always super important. However, you can only do this once you're in first place, which is pretty much unachievable with this 30-year-old shitbox. Now that you've mastered all of this, it's time to move on to the car itself. Thank you for showing us how to drive, Takumi Fujiwara with a tan. As you must have probably guessed, the 86 excels at A-Class road racing. although you could use it for alley if you really want to. Before you get started, there is one extremely important thing we need to do. Go to conversion and do a rear wheel drive swap. It's not like the car was front wheel drive to begin with, we are just giving the back wheels double the power. Trust me, that's how it works. Now that you've done this, just proceed with business as usual. Get race tires and make them as thick as you can on the back since the car is rear wheel drive. Get a race clutch, transmission, and differential. Don't worry Driveline chan, we will not forget about you. Get race brakes, race springs, anti-roll bars, and weight reduction. Roll cage is not necessary. Next up, for engine upgrades, start by getting race camshafts, so that your engine can rev higher. Don't worry, it can't reach 13,000 revs. Next up get a race exhaust, and, because the car is naturally aspirated, get a race intake manifold. Now that you have the three most important engine parts, just spend the rest of your PI on power until you reach the top of A class. In my case, I went for a race ignition, followed by a race engine block. This left me at 799 PI, which should be more than enough to get whatever shitty ricer rims or body kit you want on your car. But if you're happy with the way the car looks, get a sports flywheel. Now your PI is finally at 800, but we are not done here. Go back to drivetrain and check if we can still get a driveline. Sadly, we cannot. I lied to you, Driveline chan. Now that you're done gluing your engine together with dad's money, it's time to tune your car to perfection. For gearing, adjust your final drive towards acceleration until your top speed is 175 miles per hour or 280 kilometers per hour. However, if you want to make this a dedicated circuit car, tune it to 160 miles per hour or 260 kilometers per hour. For alignment, get 0.12 out at the front and 0.12 in at the back. When it comes to all three of your suspension settings, I like to keep the stock values because I prefer to have my cars understeer rather than oversteer. However, if you feel like the understeer is bothering you too much in this car, I'd suggest softening up the front springs or anti-roll bars. Tune your braking force pressure to 90% so that your brakes don't lock up. And lastly, for your differential, set your acceleration to 50% and your deceleration to 20%. And that's it. If you feel like all of that was too complicated, you can just download the tune from my Forza storefront. My gamer tag is Flamethrower XXX. Now that you're ready to blow your competition out of the water and not blow your engine while you're at it, go get some Podium Finishes. And remember that the CRX at the back of the car stands for Cool Racer Extreme, which is exactly what you are for driving this car. Goodbye and thank you for watching.